Good evening. Thanks for coming. So I'm accompanied here by Erin. She's a sustainability professor at UNH, and three capstone students who basically put this presentation together and worked on preparing this BioBlitz presentation. Rachel, Lou, and Windsor. So I'll let Erin talk a little bit about the capstone project that the students took upon.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Veronique. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for coming out tonight. I have the privilege of being the instructor for these wonderful sustainability dual major students. One of the classes that I teach at UNH is the capstone course for graduating sustainability dual major students. And this program is a program for students from all different majors and colleges across the university who are interested in adding a layer of learning about sustainability to whatever their primary studies are. So hopefully you guys will introduce yourselves and tell us about your different majors as well. One of the things that we do in the capstone course is that students work in interdisciplinary teams with a community partner and collaborate on a sustainability action research project. So we have, and this fall, we had the wonderful opportunity to work with Veronique and other members of the Conservation Commission and the Landowner Stewardship Subcommittee to help plan the Durham's first BioBlitz. So one of the things that we do for the capstone projects is I reach out to folks that I know in the Durham community and on campus to find out if they have sustainability projects that they could use some support for, some energy and creativity from students over the course of the semester to contribute to a sustainability initiative. And so I reached out to Veronique when she started talking about wanting to organize a BioBlitz, and I said, what about getting some students involved and helping do a little bit of research to figure out how to plan the event? And she was game, and we are so lucky to have been able to work with Veronique, who's spent a lot of time, more than a couple hours, I think, every week working with the students to help get this event planned. So thanks so much for coming out tonight. I'm going to turn it over to our students now to tell you more about the project and explain how you can get involved.
So I'm Rachel Hazelwood. I'm a Human Development and Family Studies major, and I dual in Sustainability.
I'm Louis Aranello. I'm a Sustainability dual major, and my primary major is Spanish.
Hi, I'm Windsor. I'm a Communication major, and I dual major in Sustainability as well.
So the main issue we're trying to address here, and we went into, is biodiversity. And biodiversity is the variety of ecological species that impacts both the environment, economy, and equity. The main thing we were specifically focusing on was biodiversity loss and how that can affect our lands. And biodiversity loss is at a local issue because there's an increase in invasive plants and animals here in Durham. There's a loss of native plants and animals, and the development causes habitat fragmentation. And so our goal is to protect local waterways. And so what is a BioBlitz? A BioBlitz is a day-long community event where we bring together nature lovers, families, scientists, everyone together to identify local species within the area. So it's basically a nature walk with volunteer local experts, and they will take you through the nature walk, and you will get to take pictures and identify different species and different biodiversity within the land. It is a learning opportunity, and then the observations can be recorded, and they will be taken into a natural resource database for Durham.
Thank you. So why is a BioBlitz important? Well, first of all, it documents the local biodiversity. So this is just valuable data that's needed just in case anyone wants to do any projects or just kind of know what's going on in our ecosystem. As well as it brings the community together. So this encourages environmental stewardship, which is a very important thing to just kind of get together with everyone, have some fun while also doing something very meaningful. So this graphic here is just kind of like a word map of when you ask someone what's a BioBlitz, these are the words that you can come up with. So observations, nature, challenges, biodiversity, all important things that just bring the day together. So what to expect? So our BioBlitz is going to be at the Oyster River Forest from 6:30 to 2:30. And this does not mean that you have to be there from 6:30 to 2:30. That is a long day for some people. So there are different things that we're going to be doing, and you can come at the beginning, come at the end, leave and come, whatever you want to do. This is something where you have to make sure you bring your camera or your smartphone just so you can record your observations. And there's no experience necessary. You just have to be ready to learn and to listen and have some fun. And so you'll be able to see your findings on iNaturalist at the end of the day, and that's kind of what to expect. The activities that we have are for everyone, so there are also kids' activities. There are things like a scavenger hunt and leaf rubbing, which is essentially you put a leaf underneath a piece of paper and you color over it and you get to see the outline of the leaf, and it's very fun. And there's also interactive nature walks, so getting to play with like little things, little bugs, everything, and kids love that stuff. So that's all fun activities. They're also safe for kids to do, but there's also activities for adults. So there are guided nature walks, so you'll get to learn something as well as identify different species. So that's just activities for everyone, not just one age group.
So the best part about all these activities is that each one of them goes towards a pretty significant cause. That cause being the collection of data to create a natural resource database for the town of Durham. So what that means is every observation that we record this spring at the BioBlitz will go towards ensuring that the town of Durham has a better understanding of the local plant and animal wildlife that it is home to. So right here is an example of what our results could look like come May. This is a screenshot of the Seacoast Science Center BioBlitz. It's an event that occurs annually, has occurred annually for over 20 years, so they're very experienced with what they do. This map, each pin on the map represents a separate species observation. And as you can see, there's over 800 of them. So if we hope to achieve something like this come springtime with all the observations in the Oyster River Forest. We will have a similar map. And this will be useful for things like city planning, resource conservation, and just having better general knowledge of what plants and animals are here for environmental stewardship. As for the schedule, this is how we're planning on filling out the map. So we have an early start at 6:30 a.m. with birds, because that's when they're all out getting the worm and whatnot. And after that, we have 8:30 check-ins. So those of you who don't want to wake up at 6 a.m. on a Sunday, don't have to. And that's another pretty awesome thing about this event, is that you can come and go whenever you please. So if you're only interested in bog plants and bugs, then you only have to attend those two activities. Just a heads up though, we are doing bring your own lunch, so I wouldn't recommend only coming from 11:45 to 12:30. Each of these activities will be led by local naturalists and experts who will be more than excited to share all of their knowledge with you, whether it be on invasive plants, fungi and lichen, butterflies, bog plants. There will be an expert who will be able to answer just about any question that you might have. So aside from the schedule, we also have created this nice little flyer just with some general information on the BioBlitz, and to get people excited, get people ready, just they know the date and what to expect. If you want to have this to save the date, we recommend taking a picture, and we also encourage you to get the word out, talk to as many people as you can about this event, whether or not you think they're interested, because even people who don't have experience, as Windsor mentioned, are always welcome at the BioBlitz. It's for everybody. So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and there will be a sign-up online set up probably at the end of January for the event. So you'll be able to register for the event. So we decided to host the BioBlitz at Oyster River Forest Spruce Hole Bog property this coming year. And one of the reasons was it's a very big property, 172 acre for Oyster River, and Spruce Hole Bog adds another 42 acre, and there's a lot of different habitats. We're going to be able to split the groups in different directions to maximize possible observations. So Spruce Hole Bog, so that those two properties are off Mill Road and Packers Falls Road, for those who don't know. Spruce Hole Bog is a 42 acre property, and it's mostly upland woods, except for a big depression in the center. That's a 2.5 acre kettle hole bog. It's a deep depression that was formed during glaciation when big blocks of ice broke off, and over time they melted to form what is called a kettle hole. And that area is actually designated as a national natural landmark by the National Park Service. There is an easily accessible trail that leads around the top of the bog to protect the water quality and the unique plants community that are in the bog. The trail goes just around the perimeter on the top. And Oyster River Forest, there's nearly 3 miles of trails on Oyster River Forest. The main trail goes through, first from the parking lot, you go through an oak pine forest, then you go through the restored meadow that you see right here, and shrub habitat, and then you go through another part of the forest along the Oyster River. So this meadow is about 60 acres, and it's a managed meadow. A lot of work has been done there in partnership with NRCS, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and the Fish and Game to eradicate, what is that? To eradicate invasives and to make great habitat for wildlife. What is it? It doesn't show it on here.
Oh, interesting. All right, hold on. See if we can make it go away. There you go.
Apologies. So we think this property for our first BioBlitz is big enough to have different groups explore different habitats at the same time, and the bog is really such a unique feature that we thought it would be kind of an added bonus. And we already have several people interested in leading groups next to the bog to talk about the habitat there. And with this, I'm going to hand it out to Haley Andreozzi, who graciously has helped us through this project, working with the students. We had a couple meetings, and she has written a guide about how to organize a BioBlitz. She's with the UNH Cooperative Extension. And thank you so much, Haley. And Haley's going to walk us through how to use iNaturalist, which is basically what we're going to use during the event. Thank you.
Thanks, Veronique. All right, hi everyone. So I'm Haley Andreozzi. I'm the Wildlife Conservation State Specialist with UNH Extension, and so I wear a lot of hats in that role, but I'd say the primary driver of my work is helping landowners, communities, and conservation organizations learn more about wildlife and habitats on their land or on the land that they own or manage, so that they can make informed decisions about how to protect or conserve or manage those wildlife and habitats. And BioBlitzes have become a tool in that toolbox of helping people collect really useful natural resources data about wildlife and other natural resources so that people can know what they have before they make those decisions, right? So years ago, we started working to help towns and conservation groups implement these BioBlitz events. We worked on a grant funded by the U.S. Forest Service to provide direct assistance to towns to do that work. So again, there's like national agency support for implementing these BioBlitz events, and so always happy to provide any sort of guidance or advice that we can to towns like Durham who are looking to do a BioBlitz, because it's a great way to get people engaged. It's also a great way to collect data when you have limited resources, quite frankly. And so BioBlitzes are a tool in that toolbox, and a tool that we use to implement those BioBlitzes often is iNaturalist. Has anyone heard of iNaturalist before? Yeah, so if I asked that question 10 years ago, it was almost like no one in the room had heard of it. It was cutting edge, like it just kind of emerging as this really useful app and website, essentially an online platform that lets us collect biodiversity data. But more and more we're seeing that people are hearing about it and know about it and are using iNaturalist as a tool to learn more about their backyards or their community lands, when they're out there on the landscape. So if you haven't heard of it, essentially, iNaturalist, again, it's an app, it's a website, it's basically this community-driven biodiversity platform. It's free to use, and it allows people to record and share observations of different species, plants, animals, fungi, any wild living organism. It was started as a master's project out of UC Berkeley in 2008. Some master's student had this great, incredible idea. It eventually was a project that was co-sponsored by the California Academy of Sciences and National Geographic. So again, some real belief behind this effort. But now in the last few years, it operates as its own nonprofit. So it's its own thing at this point. But iNaturalist essentially serves two major purposes. The first is that it's a community, right? It's kind of like a social network of naturalists, of educators, of nature lovers, of just curious observers out there in the world. So it has this community aspect to it. And then it also serves as this global database of biodiversity observations that then biologists, researchers, conservationists, educators can use as they're doing their work, as they're conducting research, as they're making decisions out there on the landscape. And so not only can you make observations in iNaturalist, as you can see here, recording your observations, you can also share them with fellow naturalists and get help with the identification of those observations from that community of naturalists who are engaged on this platform, but also from what they now have is really excellent predictive technology using your photo submissions. It can tell you with almost frightening accuracy what you're seeing in that photograph. You can keep track of your observations. You can see what other people have shared. You can upload data on what you find in your backyard or while you're out there venturing across the landscape. And then again, enlist the help from other community members to figure out what you have found. And then that data is used by researchers and others throughout the world when they are looking to ask questions about the world around us. So this is a little bit of what the iNaturalist interface looks like if you're using it on your app. And in iNaturalist, photos are data points. The data is a photo, okay? And so you, as an iNaturalist user, will take a photo of something that you observe. Again, any plant, animal, caterpillar, whatever wild living organism you're stumbling out upon there in the world, and you share that either on the app or the website. Most people use the app to make these observations, though you can do it through the website. It's just a little bit clunkier. And so this is just a screenshot of some example of some past observations that I've made on this particular account. But over 180 million observations have been made on iNaturalist worldwide from folks who are just curious, wondering what they see, or excited about sharing with this larger research community. I find that it's helpful when introducing people to iNaturalist to talk about the terminology a little bit, so it's not some hidden lingo from you. And the first bit of terminology is the different user roles that there are in iNaturalist. And so there's two ways you can participate as a user on iNaturalist. The first is as an observer, okay? And an observer is someone who is making or submitting an observation in iNaturalist. Essentially someone who's going out there and collecting and submitting the data. That makes you an observer in iNaturalist. But again, there are also this other set of users, the second set of users, the identifiers. You can be both an observer and an identifier, but you can only play one role at one given role at any given time. And so identifiers are users that are going in and agreeing with or making suggestions for the species identification for things that observers have submitted, okay? And these identifications evolve over time as different people or more people provide identifications. So this is an example of what you see in iNaturalist, that I found a wild cherry sphinx moth in my backyard, and I said, that's a wild cherry sphinx moth, with some help from their predictive AI technology, because I didn't know that. And then S. Tomlin 701, who I have no idea who that person is. I've not met them, but again, they're part of this larger iNaturalist community, came in and said, yep, I agree, that's a wild cherry sphinx moth. And then Lauren T. Dew said the same thing, right? So we're starting to get this kind of community consensus around what that species is in that photo data point that I submitted, and coming to an agreement about, what we're seeing. These observations that are being submitted are the basic units of iNaturalist. And an observation basically records an encounter with an organism at a particular time and location. Okay, so those are kind of the three main pieces of an observation. A photo, they'll also allow you to submit sound at this point, so if it is a frog call or a bird call. But for most of you, it's going to be a photo, a location, it's like a lat long coordinates, and a date. And those are the three things that you need to submit an observation. And then for each observation, there's an identification associated with it, right? Or an ID for short. And that's basically an assessment of the type of animal or plant or other organism that you are observing. And again, on iNaturalist, users are encouraged to add identifications to the observations that other folks have made, and trying to get to this kind of improved consensus and ultimately resulting in what's called a community identification. What does the iNaturalist community agree that this species is in this photo? And a caveat here is that observers are asked to only identify an observation to the level at which they are confident, based on what they observed or based on the evidence in the observation that they're submitting. So an example might be that I see a weasel run across my backyard and I snap a photo, right? But I can't quite tell from the photo if it's a short-tailed weasel or a long-tailed weasel, because it's in summer. That's part of the imagination game here. And so I'm just going to submit it as being a weasel, period. Genus Mustela, right? And you don't have to know that. You just type in weasel and they'll help you get there. But only doing it to the level to which I'm confident. And there might be other people on the app who can look at that photo, and they're weasel experts, and they can say, oh, I know that based on this one feature, that's likely a short-tailed weasel. But let them do that, right? So you as the observer are asked to only identify to the level to which you are completely confident. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but just to say there's like this data quality piece to iNaturalist as well. They are really looking for consensus from multiple observers to make an observation what they call research grade. So you can see that little green flag at the top next to that wild cherry sphinx moth identification. Once it has that flag, because the community has come to some sort of consensus on that identification, it gets put in this category of research grade. That means, okay, now it's up for grabs for researchers, biologists, planners to use that information in a meaningful way. If it doesn't get there for a number of reasons, either it's missing a location or it's missing a date, or you don't have a photo, right? Or the community just can't agree on what it is, it'll get put in a different category. So it's just not quite there yet. So it's really, again, this social platform that's allowing for more accurate biodiversity data than if it was just one person submitting without any oversight or input from others. In iNaturalist, there are what are called projects, okay? And so projects are basically observations that are collected under some sort of common purpose. The creator of the project, which could be you or anyone who wants to create one, can determine what that common purpose is, all right? But you don't have to participate in projects or find projects or follow projects to participate in iNaturalist. You can just use the app and submit observations, and off they go and they'll do their thing. But looking into projects and finding ones that excite you can be a way to engage with the platform in a different way, learn more about a particular suite of species or taxa that you're really interested in, right? And so it can just be cool to explore like what's going on. Or like with the Durham BioBlitz, like finding a particular event that's looking for people to contribute observations. So just some examples of that. We have a project here in New Hampshire called the New Hampshire Butterfly Monitoring Network that's part of a larger initiative to collect more data on butterfly species in the state. And so this is a project that we run in partnership with New Hampshire Fish and Game Department. And so this is a collection project that basically anytime someone submits a butterfly species in the state of New Hampshire, it gets put into this project. And we, as the project leaders, get to observe and learn more about butterfly species populations and their distributions in the state because of observations people are making out there. Whether they know it or not, they're like helping us learn, which is cool. This is an example. We ran a statewide BioBlitz about 5 years or so, 4 years ago, I guess. It was a month long, and it collected observations from town-owned lands all over the state of New Hampshire. So our goals were to get people out on town-owned lands and to help towns learn more about the natural resources on those properties. So we had, like, that was the goal of that project. This is an example of a BioBlitz project at the Stratford Town Forest about 6 years ago. And so this is similar, as Lou showed you, something that you will see after the Durham BioBlitz here in Oyster River Forest, kind of this tight pack of observations on one property over a short period of time. In this case, it was 2 days on a weekend, made by just a handful of folks in the town of Stratford to learn more about that one particular place. But the good news is you don't have to wait until the BioBlitz to use iNaturalist and help Durham learn more about their natural resources. Veronique has set up a project in iNaturalist called the Durham Biodiversity Project. And this is a project that doesn't have any bounds by time. Okay, so unlike the Oyster River Forest BioBlitz, which is going to be a snapshot, an intense survey, well, intense like fun, not intense in a not fun way, but intense in the effort way. A lot of focused effort on that one property, that one particular place, and one day in the spring. It's useful to submit observations all over the town of Durham at any time of year. So this is a project that will collect any observations made in the town of Durham at any time. And so you can get out there, and the goal is really to have you start using and practice using and getting familiar with iNaturalist now. So come time for the BioBlitz, like it's a platform and an interface that you're comfortable with. So that exists, and encourage you to take a look at that project and explore what people have already observed in your town. Which, I'm like, oh, pear-shaped puffball, it's cool. It's a cool place to explore and learn. I do just want to point out that since iNaturalist was started in 2008, the rate at which it is being used for scientific research is growing exponentially. So as observations and users grow almost exponentially on the platform, the rate at which that data becomes useful to researchers is also growing, okay? And so this is a paper that was published in the Journal of Bioscience in the middle of this year that did kind of an assessment of the research papers that use iNaturalist. It's like research on research, it's very meta, but that use iNaturalist in data in their research. And so they found over 5,000 peer-reviewed papers that had been used since that platform was started. Since 2022 alone, there have been over 1,400 papers published. So that's a publishing rate of almost 4 papers per day using iNaturalist data. It's like incredible. And they found these research papers covered 600 different plant, animal, fungi families observed in almost 130 countries. So it really is kind of this global phenomenon. And there's a great New York Times article about that paper. So you don't have to actually read the paper. You can just read the New York Times article. And I will also say there's just some really cool examples of like non-scientists making incredible discoveries, like new plant species in a national park here in the United States found by a volunteer who, like a national park which is staffed by biologists and researchers, right? There's like a volunteer who found a new plant species, or someone found a bird species in New Guinea that hadn't been seen. They thought it was extinct. It hadn't been seen in 70 years or something, and they photographed it, right? So just really incredible opportunities abound in iNaturalist. So I'm going to walk you through a quick demo, maybe, hopefully, about how to submit an observation on iNaturalist. But before I do that, I just want to point out that there are 2 iNaturalist apps available at this current moment. Okay, so if you go to your app store and you go to look up the iNaturalist app, you'll find both iNaturalist Classic and iNaturalist like Green, which is the new one. Okay. So the Classic is an older version, but it's still available and used heavily. And it supports some more like complex, I use that term relatively, but some more complex user features, okay? A lot of people prefer the Classic. iNaturalist, the new one, has anyone used Seek before? Seek is another app. Yeah, so Seek is an app by iNaturalist. And they essentially were like, we want iNaturalist to actually look more like Seek, which is a more user-friendly interface and a kind of a simpler design and not as many bells and whistles, I would say. So either one works. I would say iNaturalist, the new one, they're still working on kind of integrating all the features into it. And so eventually they intend to phase out Classic and go with the new one. In the meantime, I'm still telling people to download and use the Classic just because, again, the new one doesn't have all the features you might want to use on your phone at your fingertips. So, but totally up to you. I have both, and like you can use them interchangeably and be logged into both on your phone if you're a nerd like me. And so how are we doing on time, Veronique? Should I do an app demo or save it? Okay. All right, so I can walk you through a little bit of what the app looks like. And so, again, so you have your apps on your phone. This is going to look different if you're on Android versus iPhone or iOS, right? But the functionality is the same, just, as with anything between those two interfaces, where you find the menu bar might just be a little bit different, but same icons, same idea, okay? So I have the iNaturalist Classic app here. I'm going to open it. And you can see here when I open it, it brings me to this Me page, this little, I can use my pointer. This little green kind of like my landing page down here at the bottom, and it shows just some recent observations I've made on this particular account. If there has been recent activity on one of those observations, like someone has gone in and made confirmed that, yes, I did see a small tortoiseshell when I was in Norway earlier this fall. Which again, like this is the app helping me identify that because I don't know European butterflies, like I know New Hampshire butterflies. There's other people who have gone in and said, yep, that is what you saw. So it's cool to keep tabs on that. It'll give me that little red identification if that's the case. There's also, I'll just show you the other kind of features down here, this projects tab. This is where you can explore both the projects that you've already joined. So you can see that I have joined the Durham Biodiversity Project. So I can open up that project and explore, what's been found. I can do that all in the app as well as on the website. And I can also find projects that are nearby by clicking this little nearby tab up at the top. You can see there's quite a few for UNH classes, which is fun. So some of these might be projects you have to actively join. Some might be projects that automatically collect your observation. You can do a little bit of exploring around and see what there is. Activity tab down here is like any activity tab you would see on a social media platform. That's just kind of showing your feed, your latest feed. And the Explore tab allows you to see observations near you, like what's going on near Ty Smile, but see observations in your area. So you can click around there and see them both in the map view, which is the default up here at the top, but also this grid view. I always get confused what I need to click on my phone versus on the computer, or a list view as well. So again, lots to explore. Some of this stuff is easier to explore on the website. Like I'd rather look at this big map and see these lists of species and explore what's going on in the Durham Biodiversity Project on the website, but you can do it on the app. The only thing I really use the app for and don't use the website for is submitting an observation, which is what I'll walk you through now. Again, you can use the website to do this, but it requires you to get the photo onto your computer from your camera or your phone and then upload it, and the geo coordinates don't always travel with the photo depending on your settings, so it's just a little clunkier. And if you're someone who's out there with your phone and that's what you're using to take images, it's much easier to just use your phone while you're at it. So you're going to click this Observe, which is the camera icon down here at the bottom. When you click that, it gives you the option to use your camera, so to take a picture of whatever you're observing, through the app and your phone camera, or go into your photo library and pull a photo from there. Again, you can also record sound live in the moment. But regardless, I tend to take pictures through my camera before I'm even in the app because it just allows me to be like more prepared and reactive and again, just like make sure I have what I need before I'm coming into the app to submit the observation. So I'm going to click Photo Library. I'll get to see pictures of my kids. And then I have just a little collection here I created for pictures for this demo purpose, for instance. So this is a frog that my son found in our backyard about a month and a half ago. I took pictures of it, but I haven't submitted it to iNaturalist yet. And so I can just go into my photo library and pick the pictures that I want to submit as part of this observation. You can pick multiple photos to be part of an observation, which is nice, especially because a lot of species, whether it's a plant, an animal, an insect, a mushroom, showing different views or aspects is really important in figuring out what that species actually is. And so more often than not, you are submitting more than one photo. But if you only got one, it's what you have. So I'm going to submit all 3 of these photos because one's like a little bit more head-on, one's a little bit more on top. And I'm going to hit add up in this top corner. And when I click add, it'll start to create this observation. I can kind of drag these, oh no, on this one, I can change the photos that I want to be the default. So if there's one photo that's like really emblematic of the species that you're observing, you know, it's like the best view of the whole thing, for instance, you can make that the default photo and kind of change the order up here. You can also click plus if you forgot to add some photos and add more. And then you can see down here that a lot of this has been filled in for me, and that's because I have my camera settings on my phone as such, that it allows it to capture the geolocation, capture the date and time that that photo was taken, and iNaturalist is going to pull that information from the photo itself in my phone, like however that works, okay? But if you don't have to have that. So some people don't like that. They don't want their phone remembering things about the pictures they're taking or whatever. And that's fine because you can always click on this and do it manually. Okay, so you can change the date manually, and you can also go in and change the location manually. So, you know, if this was, so like for instance, this is an observation that was maybe a little bit more here, and I want to make sure it's like just right. I can save that and move it around. You can also change the geo-privacy. So I have this one on open, but actually when I'm submitting things that are like in my backyard, I do it as obscured, which puts kind of like a buffer circle around the observation, and when it's showing it to people, it puts it within that circle randomly. So it's not showing people like exactly where I live, but you all know. So I'm going to do obscured. If you do private, it actually just keeps the details on exactly where that observation was made to just you, which becomes prohibitive if you're trying to share this observation for the town of Durham to learn more about biodiversity, but can be useful for a variety of reasons. And then if I wanted to manually add this to a project, I could click projects down here and go ahead and manually add it to a project. But I don't need to in this case. I'm going to just let it get absorbed into the Deerfield Biodiversity Project, which automatically pulls any observations in Deerfield. And then the big kind of thing here that I skipped over, because like save the best for last, is this what did you see piece, okay, right? And so this is where you can either go in and choose, this is what I know what I saw, and this is what it is, or what will happen is that it will load suggestions based on the photo, based on the date when I took the photo, and based on other observations that have been made nearby of different species that resemble what's in that photo. And so here it's telling me that it's pretty sure it's in this genus, and the top suggestion is that it's a wood frog. And I happen to know it's a wood frog because I know frogs. So I'm going to pick wood frog. I'm going to click on that, and that's it. And then I'm going to hit share down here at the bottom, and I'm going to share my observation. And so when I go back to this Me tab at the bottom, you'll see that up here it's loading my observation of wood frog, and it's syncing it up to iNaturalist. If I'm out of service, if I didn't have internet service or didn't have data, I can still go through these steps. I won't be able to access that predictive photo technology, but you can still go in and save your observation and then just upload it later. Okay, so you can go in and edit it later so that you can fill out that what did you see field and get that support if you want it. And then this would turn into just a big green arrow button that I would hit and say, you know, it would say like one observation waiting to submit, and I would hit the green button and submit it. So yeah, any questions about what it looks like to submit that observation? That's pretty simple, right? Yeah. So, and that's it. And now, like, it's off for other people to concur or disagree with, if they will. And then that becomes really useful data. In the case of wood frogs, you know, New Hampshire Fish and Game is looking at this data to understand the distribution of amphibians and reptiles regularly, because they're species that, you know, we don't have really concrete range distribution data on here in the state. So, very useful. All right, now getting out of here is the question. Okay. And with that said, there are just some tips for making useful observations. So to have it be useful for the town of Durham, to have it be useful for researchers in the future, it's really important to submit a photograph that actually enables people to see what it is that you're observing, or to confirm the species from that photograph. And a note that typically iNaturalist observations, you saw in how I just submitted that observation, it's just of one species. So I don't have the opportunity to say, like, this is a wood frog and this is some sort of sedge grass that it's in, right? I only have the opportunity to identify one species per observation. So typically that is what you are doing. When you're taking a photo, you're saying, I'm observing this one thing, I'm trying to get photos that are good of this one thing, and I will submit that as the observation to iNaturalist. There are exceptions to that. There's some projects that are looking at like pollinator-plant interactions, for example, or forest, invasive forest pests and different tree species and how they are interacting, but those are like unique case scenarios, and you still would need to submit them as different interactions in some cases, or different observations. All right, the first tip is just to get the shot. Okay, so animals, insects, they move, they fly, they scurry away, and so you can take the time to get closer to your subject, to zoom in a little bit, get it more in focus on your second or third shot. But your first goal, especially when it comes to wildlife, is to just focus on getting the shot, right? Getting at least one picture, because having any photograph is better than having none at all. Because without a photograph, iNaturalist really doesn't consider it even a valid data point. And it can be really tempting to zoom in on a subject. This is a bear in my backyard, but the zoom function on camera phones really decreases the quality of images. And so it's really actually best to take the picture from far away and then just crop the photo later to submit it to iNaturalist. Another tip is just to make sure you're getting your subject in focus. Clear, crisp images are really important, especially for things like insects, where, again, like the banding pattern on bees is really important to identify between different species. And so even if you don't know what it is, again, getting that picture in focus so that someone who does know what it is has the information that they need to make that identification. If your device, your camera, won't focus on the subject, you might be too close, and so you can back up, because, again, you can always crop a photo if your subject is too small in it, but you can't change a picture that's out of focus. You can't make it better after the fact. So, oh yeah, and most photos, most smartphones or cameras now, like you tap on it once or twice on the part that you want to be in focus, and it does it for you. So you can practice that. You also want to show different angles. So that wood frog example was like not a great one. If ideally you want to get up underneath it and to the side and on top, right? But I know, I'm sort of seeing Katie here, like I know almost nothing about snails because I'm a terrestrial biologist, but apparently, there's something about the foot of like that periwinkle that will tell you what it is, one species or another. I don't know, but if you didn't have that picture of underneath, am I saying this right, Katie? She's like, I don't know. Then whoever is going to identify it later on, like needs that to be able to make that determination. Similarly, this part I do know, taking photos of different parts of plants. Identification for plants can often involve looking at the bark, the buds, the flowers, the leaf, right? So all the different plant parts. So having multiple images that show different features of the plant is really useful. You also want to think about using shade when you can to provide more clarity and definition to your photos. So you can use your hat or your hand or your whole body to eliminate the overexposure that can be caused by the sun when you're making observations. And find habitat, like seek out the places where you might find some of these critters. A large part of my job is letting people know that wildlife are not randomly distributed across the landscape. Like it's not random. They're all seeking out some combination of habitat characteristics, namely food, water, and cover. And so for some species, those requirements might be really specific. For some more generalist species, they might not be as picky and they might be found in a wider diversity of places. But if we want to find wildlife, a diversity of wildlife, we have to key in on a diversity of places where we can find those things that they need, food, water, and cover. Look up and down, okay? So many of us look straight forward when we're walking out there in nature towards the horizon. It's like our natural resting state, and for good reason. It gives us like a scenic view. But it's important to remember to look up. There's some species that climb trees or they fly, and so looking up allows us to see animals that are in nests or hives or just hanging up on the tree like that porky. Looking down or underneath things allows us to discover wildlife that spends some or most of their time on the ground or even underground. There's some species like insects and amphibians that rely on the cover of rocks or logs. So just a note that if you do, during the Durham BioBlitz or just on your own explorations, lift up these types of natural cover to explore underneath. Just be sure to put them back carefully where you found them and make sure there's no critters underneath that are going to be squished. And then be safe, right? So in all of our explorations of nature, we just want to make sure we're keeping ourselves safe and keeping wildlife safe. So this is a scary looking spider, right? It's not. It's just a yellow garden spider, right? But if you don't know, it could be something like, what is that? And also, though, this spider is really beneficial and actually keeps some what might be considered pests in check. And so we don't want to be harmed by something we don't know what it is, and we also don't want to harm something that plays an important role in the ecosystem. There are a ton of resources out there about how to use iNaturalist, namely on the iNaturalist website. Their help section is thorough and robust, but has some really good resources, especially like these how-to videos that are quick about how to submit an observation. So if you're just looking for a refresher as you're going along and starting to use the app, there's some really good guidance on there. And I have a handout that I'll put out in the back that walks you through the steps of creating an account, joining a project, which is like not relevant at this point until the BioBlitz project is announced, and also just how to submit an observation. So I'll put those out. So, and yeah, I hope you all have time to explore and start using the app before the BioBlitz in May. Didn't hear that. The question is about submitting observations potentially of rare, threatened, or endangered species. And we don't always want to show people exactly a location where an individual can be found for a number of reasons. Turtle pet trade, for example, right? But iNaturalist has some protections in place. They filter out automatically observations of globally and federally threatened, rare, or endangered species. That obviously doesn't cover all of the species that we would consider rare, threatened, or endangered here in New Hampshire. So they do work with states at times to get other species in as part of that filtering system. And then also, the individual fish and wildlife agencies, for instance, or like our Natural Heritage Bureau can go in and ask iNaturalist to remove an observation if it's been identified as something that they don't want people to know the specific location of. So yeah, iNaturalist's goal is to keep those vulnerable observations protected when needed. So.
Well, thanks a lot, Haley, for enlightening us on how to use iNaturalist. I hope everybody gets a chance to start using iNaturalist before the BioBlitz. And there will be a special project created for the BioBlitz at Oyster River Forest that will be just used for that day. So this was really like our kickoff of the Durham BioBlitz. I think both the Land Stewardship Subcommittee and the Conservation Commission are really excited about having a BioBlitz in Durham. And there's going to be a lot of promotion through the Friday Updates newsletter, but also through flyers at the library, at the town hall. So we are just in January we're going to start to promote the event. There will be a sign up through the town's registration system that's handled by the Parks and Recs department, and more information is going to start to come out in January about the event. And so it will be Sunday, May 17th at the Oyster River Forest. And I want to thank our 3 students here and Erin for approaching us for that project together. I think that was really valuable to work together on the project, for the students to do some more research about it, and also for us to work together with different generations to get a little more interest into the event. So thank you very much.